Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from the Moonlands, I'll be your final dreamer, Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, his name is Gaelic for Energy, my co-host, Paul Wallace. How's it going, buddy?
David. I'm doing well, buddy. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. You know what? I wanted to talk to you about something. We've been doing Pocket Monster March Madness Month for a few weeks here now.
That's right.
We've had some great guests, right? We've had Melanie Harker, we've had Angie Perko, we've had Melanie Harker again. But the thing is that you always get to have the guests, and I never get to have one. And I feel like that's not super cool. So,
well, I feel like we're changing that a little bit tonight, which is a joy.
Well, we're going to, but I don't have them here with me. So I figured what I'd do is just try to summon one and see who shows up. Is that cool?
Yeah, go ahead.
You wanna try that? All right, I gotta do.
Please.
Just this might sound a little weird. I've got this little incantation thing that I have to do, but hopefully it works out. So let's just see how this goes.
Okay.
All right, ready? And please don't interrupt me as I'm doing it, or it won't work, as we've seen.
Well, I mean, now I'm gonna try to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, you're gonna try to. I'm just gonna plow through anyway.
You can't say that.
All right, so here we go. I'm gonna summon a guest. Get warmed up. With this animate, I imagine Evan Valentine.
Oh, hey guys.
Holy shit, it worked.
Oh, shit.
Creepy.
Oh, I just popped out of a ring. How the fuck? How did I fit into there?
I don't know, but thank you for joining us.
Oh god, I have 2 episodes of terrible shows in my brain now.
I'm glad you watched the same things we did on this spontaneous summoning.
Oh god. Oh, I don't even know how it worked. Fucking magic? This is some bullshit.
I imagined you into existence.
Oh god.
Isn't that cool?
It's almost like we're living in a imagination.
Oh, I see. That's pretty good. That's why we have Evan on the show. Now, alternately,
so angry.
If we're not happy with Evan, I could just spin like a weird stone disc and see if we get something else.
No, I'm here now.
No, I want to go with Evan. I want to stick with Evan.
Yeah, I think that's good.
You can just summon someone else another time with the shitty disc.
Evan doesn't want to be here, but we're gonna keep him anyway.
God.
So for
everything burns.
For those in the know, for this round of Pocket Monster March Madness Month, we're going to be talking Monster Rancher and Magi-Nation. 2 of the worst things that exist. The funny thing is, so at this point in the show, you'd think we'd be getting closer and closer to like similar ratings, right? So you'd think that you'd have, maybe it wouldn't be the best of the best, but also shouldn't be the worst of the worst. Because the way that we kind of seeded these, we should be kind of like, this stuff is passable. It's stuff that people enjoyed. It's stuff that had some longevity. Monster Rancher had a 7.3 rating on IMDb.
Are you fucking for real?
Magi-Nation had a 6.6. Now maybe it's not
fucking nerds.
Maybe it's not for the first episode that they got these ratings. Monster Rancher, which we'll talk about, had quite a few episodes. Magi-Nation did not. Yeah, go ahead.
And based on these ratings, I want to say that I hope that people watched the entire series and really enjoyed all of the nuances and subtleties. You are both shaking your head right now. Yeah. This is amazing.
Just in disbelief. Like I remember this show, and I sent you guys some of the other characters that were like this is the only character that made this show watchable, because I was like 12 at the time.
The hot chick with wings.
Yeah, the hot chick with like a bare midriff and wings. I was like, yeah, I'll watch this cartoon. But right out of the gates, this is not good.
Dave, what are you doing in there? Watching Monster Rancher. Don't open the door.
That's true. It was like, it's probably a little rough. I watched it in the back. But anyway, in case you guys out there have no clue what we're actually talking about, Sean and I are going to walk us through the history and synopsis of this show. I'm going to start things off with Monster Rancher, if everybody's cool with that. So, Monster Rancher, known in Japan as Monster Farm or Mansuku Famu, is a 73-episode anime series based on Tecmo's Monster Rancher video game franchise. It originally aired on Japanese television from 1999 to 2001, and in Japan, the program existed as 2 separate series: The Secret of the Stone Disc, or Enbanseki no Himitsu, and The Legendary Path, Densetsu I no Michi. An English-language version by Bobat Entertainment aired in North America on Fox Kids and YTV. And Sean, you got Magi-Nation's background for us?
Yes, so Magi-Nation is a Canadian-Korean animated television series based on the card game Magi-Nation Duel. The series was co-produced by Day One Media and Cookie Jar Entertainment in association with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The series premiered in Canada and in the US in 2007. The show was canceled due to low ratings in the second season. Because of that, 12 remaining episodes have not been shown on TV. Fingers crossed that those get released right to Blu-ray.
The lost episodes of Magi-Nation.
Jeez.
All right, let's talk about what these shows are actually about, because they don't let you know that in the first episode. So we'll let you know that right now. So Monster Rancher. The story follows a boy named Genki Sakura, who's a key player of the Monster Rancher video games. After winning a tournament hosted by the game's creators, Genki wins a special CD, mind you, that should place this one in time, that he can use to unlock a special monster in his game at home. However, upon using this disc in his game console, he finds himself transported to a world of monsters that, much like Genki's game, are given life by scanning special stone discs within temples. There he meets a girl named Holly who is seeking a stone disc, yeah she is,
oh god,
containing a legendary phoenix that will save the land from the tyranny of an evil ruler named Moo.
Good old Moo.
Right. Good old Moo.
Fuck that
Good
guy.
old evil Moo.
Moo
So
the
let's
Phoenix.
get into Magi-Nation.
Get it.
Magi-Nation is a 3,000 years ago in the Moonlands. The evil shadow Magi Agram was sealed inside the planet's core by the core glyphs and the dream stones which provide its power.
If we lost you already, I apologize.
Sean's falling apart like he opened the Ark of the Covenant right now. Like his
just
skin's
melting.
falling off.
Now he plans to escape by using the shadow geysers to weaken his prison in order to bring the Moonlands under his control, and only a Magi known as the Final Dreamer can stop him. A young boy from Earth, Tommy Jones, is summoned to the Moonlands as he is believed to be the Final Dreamer. He joins forces with the apprentice Magi, Eden, and the Shadow Stalker, Strag, on a mission to gather the Dreamstones before Agram is set free. Using the Book of Elders, the three travel through the Moonlands while combating the forces of Agram and gaining an ever-growing collection of dream creatures from the Moonlands that they visit.
So Evan asked us a question earlier, like, how the hell did we come across these things? So these shows, regardless of how terrible or good they are, they're terrible. So regardless of that, they basically meet a few different criteria, right? So we've got a protagonist. They're on some kind of quest. To complete that quest, they have to capture, train, and battle monster creatures in some various ways throughout the way. That's pretty much it. That was our only criteria. And these shows, at least on that basic level...
Guys, we don't write a lot of criteria.
No, it's not a lot. It's really,
keeping it flexible.
It's not super structured. So that, based on that, these shows exist, and they exist for this purpose. So we're fine with that. That being said, if this is your first time listening to a Pocket Monster March Madness episode, we have 5 different criteria here that we're about to go through for each show, and we're going to rank it a score from 1 to 5. 1 being terrible, 5 being perfect. Sean, what do you got?
The caveat being that if this is the first episode that you're ever listening to, we apologize in advance for hating these shows.
It's gonna be the worst episode.
Yeah,
first and worst. But that should make for some fun discussion, I think, because
some banter.
Yeah,
nice
some weird,
banter.
snappy banter. So basically, we're gonna start with the theme song because that's separate from the rest of the show itself. A theme song can stand on its own, or it can be a complete train wreck. And also, just as a caveat too, so we watched the English language version of both of these series, and we only watched the first episode. So yes, we understand that they will get better, hopefully, as the show goes on, but to keep things consistent among all the series, we only watched the first episode. So that's going to hamstring us a little bit, especially when we get to the boss of these episodes. But for the theme song, it should be fine. So Sean, buddy, you're our theme song guru. Let's start with the theme song of Monster Rancher. What do you got?
Well, you mentioned Trainwreck, so woo, all aboard. There is so much that is going on in this theme song for Monster Rancher. There is a weird kind of spoken rap. There is a portion where they're singing, followed by a portion where they're singing and there's rapping, and then it all rounds out with a robot voice at the end.
It's ahead of its time.
The cardinal sins of any theme song have all been checked off.
But I will say, in its defense, it actually does a decent job of explaining the idea of unlocking monsters, which is really the core concept and idea that's behind the show Monster Rancher and the video game. So if you were unfamiliar with the video game, watching this for the first time, it does do a good job of giving you some insight into what's happening. But the main problem is that there's so many styles that occur within this that they all just sort of conflict with each other for this theme song, making it very challenging to watch, and it's definitely not something that's going to become an earworm and get stuck in your head.
No, definitely not. So, Evan, what was your take on this? I know you had texted me earlier in the week, just like, I just want to talk about this theme song.
It became an earworm and was stuck in my head. That's
no!
Oh no! Oh, it totally got stuck in my head. It's awful, but it got stuck in my head. For the rest of my life, I'm gonna be hearing this terrible, horrible rap. Like, okay, when all is said and done, yes, it gives you a basic idea by spelling out everything that happens in the show through terrible. The guy who rapped this was white. There's no 100%. Way.
We know him. So
if we know him personally, there's no way. Like, to be honest, okay, it tells you what's going on. It does have some cool, like, shows some cool stuff going on, and I don't just want to give everything a 1 out of 5 as much as it deserves it for this show. But I'll go ahead. I'll give this a 2 out of 5. I was gonna think 2.5, but I'm gonna round it down because I don't want anybody to listen to this and be. I feel like I had a curse put on my soul when I listened to this, and that my life is gonna be different from this point moving forward.
Just from the theme song, I'd like to mention that Evan has been cursed. Just from the theme song
and other various reasons, but the theme song.
So this is a preliminary
first and
curse.
Foremost.
And then we'll go around a little bit and we'll discuss first, because what'll happen is we'll do our scores at the end, because when like if Sean and I have one score in mind and you make some really
okay.
Points, no, cool.
Okay.
But we've had in the past where we actually have a score where we come into it and then somebody makes a good point one direction or the other, or if you're Melanie Harker, you use spike points, and then you can actually change your score one way or the other. So if you want to spike,
that sounds legit.
Yeah, if you want to spike somebody, you can add or subtract from your own score.
Oh, okay.
And it'll really royally screw them over. So no, that's fine. Yeah, basically, I wrote lazy white rap and weird harmonies, and that pretty much summed up this show for me. But then, and here's the worst part, I extend the theme song to like all theme music for the show. So if there's a bad outro, I'll knock it down a point. This show had a terrible outro. Yeah. If there are fucking infuriating interstitials between the show and the commercials, it'll knock it down another point. I literally just in bold and caps across my page are, oh no, there are rapping interstitials. Unlock your disc.
Oh man.
Yeah. So everything that could have possibly gone wrong for you, Dave, occurred in the Monster Rancher theme song.
Heard. Now that's an important distinction before we go back around and get our scores here. They had good visual. All right, they showed like Sean was saying, they showed kind of the idea of you have to spin the disc. I thought that was a cool gimmick. We'll talk about that in battle mechanics, but I thought that was a cool gimmick for the game. But they actually showed a shitload of monsters, and you got an idea like, okay, this world is populated with these monsters. We have an idea of how they come into being, and hopefully I get to see them at some point. Definitely not in the first episode. So that in mind, Evan's got a 2. Do you have any final thoughts from the theme song?
Fuck that theme song.
Fuck that theme song. It's a curse, and it's a 2. Sean, what did you rank the theme song?
I gave it a 2 as well.
I also gave it a 2. So that's 3 2s for us. So that's
we're all pretty consistent.
We're all on the same board here.
Yeah. Same,
I like this.
Same cursed.
Our souls were all stained.
Yeah, they're all terrible.
All moving forward.
And speaking of stains and terrible things, let's talk about the theme song for Magi-Nation. Sean, buddy, you're up.
Okay, so we've said this for the past couple weeks. This was a college band alert. This seemed like a late 90s, early 2000s college band alert. I only wish, my only wish for this is that I wanted them to come up with more words that rhymed with nation.
Like what?
They could have said, listen to this song as an abomination. This theme song encapsulates the plot of an adumbration, which is which means that it partially outlines something, which this theme song does. And it sounds like this singer continually suffers from constipation. So they could just continually add words that rhyme with nation. The thing that really annoyed me about this entire theme song is that you understand the concept that this is Magi-Nation, there's magic, but a key component of this show is imagination. And they never really mention that, which was infuriating to me.
Understood. Evan, was this also a curse upon your soul?
To be honest, I kind of thought it was harmless.
Okay.
It didn't stick with me To be fair, like even the next day, I completely forgot about it and
Rat.
had to completely rewatch it again before I came over here, just to kind of remember what it was and how many times they indeed did rhyme nation over and over and over. But it kind of gave you, again, somewhat in a similar vein as Monster Rancher, it gave you kind of some visuals into what's going on in the series. Not really explaining what's happening, but can you explain what's happening in Magi-Nation? Can anyone?
We're gonna try.
Are you able to watch more than 5 minutes before you pass out from lack of oxygen? I don't really know. I mean, you're gonna try. It's not really gonna work out for you. But I mean, at the end of the day, it was harmless. I didn't think it was that terrible.
And passing out after 5 minutes of Magi-Nation is actually for your benefit.
Yeah, and it focuses your imagination.
Yeah,
so there.
I'm gonna have Evan. Yeah, I'm gonna have Evan just take 5 seconds, just concentrate on his breathing. For me, yeah, it was a combination of what both of you said. Like, it was just bad early 2000 pop rock, lazy rhyming, some really boring riffs to kind of go through the whole thing. And then for the visuals, it was just a clip show. So we've talked about this before, and Sean's brought this up a number of times. When we watch a theme song, we watch the intro to a show, it falls into pretty much 3 different categories, which Sean has kind of gone through for his Saturday morning cartoons thesis. This one happens to fall into the clip show category, where they just show you a shitload of scenes from future episodes that you may or may not ever see before the show gets canceled. So it was just, it had no context. The visuals were okay because they at least gave me an idea of like, oh, these are the people I'm supposed to care about in some way or fashion. But honestly, kind of the same boat as Monster Rancher. And it was forgettable, which is nice because I don't have to worry about it at all.
Dave, I want to posit the question.
Yes.
Or I want to ask you the question. What if the theme song was just from the 5 episodes that never actually aired on television?
That would be great. So it's basically like you get a sneak peek at 12 canceled episodes that never aired. I would add a point, but we have neither confirmed nor denied that. So Sean, what do you rank this theme song?
I gave this as a 2 as well.
2 as well. Evan, buddy, what about you?
2 out of 5.
We're on the same page again, guys. It's a 2 out of 5 for me as well. Why? Because 1 exists if it meets the basic equivalent of being a theme song. So then it gets 1 point. If it does something a little bit extra, then yeah, I'll give it a 2. That's kind of the way I'm approaching it anyway. So cool. All right, so we'll head back to Monster Rancher. The next thing we're going to talk about is character design. Now this includes the human characters that we have, and then especially the monster designs as well. So it's kind of an all-encompassing character design for everybody. So Sean, what's your take on Monster Rancher?
So, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks about fingerless gloves.
Oh, yeah.
And this was
Sean
a show
and I exchanged pictures of our own fingerless gloves, by the way.
Why do you both own them?
I don't know.
For biking.
Mine was for something.
For cycling. So we've completely ditched the fingerless gloves in this instance.
Right.
And we've also gotten rid of shoes, and we've replaced them with inline skates. And I really thought that the human visuals that we had in here were pretty standard.
Okay.
That we had for Genki and for Holly. They were sort of that anime style that we've become very accustomed to in a lot of these shows. What I thought was the strength for this was that the variety of the different monsters that they have.
Okay.
I really enjoyed seeing some of these things that maybe I would have never thought about before, such as Shuezo, this giant kind of floating eyeball sperm, and Mochi, which is like a duck turtle. I'm
just
so
like a duck armadillo thing. I don't know.
Yeah, duckadillo. And so the duckadillo was interesting. These things were different, and then we had different dinosaurs, and we had rock golems. So there was a very wide variety of things that were included in this show, and that was fun to see.
Cool. Evan, what's your take on the character design?
I am going to disagree with everything that Sean said.
Set it on fire.
Bring it, Valentine! Bring it!
I hated everything about their designs. I thought that Genki and Holly were the most bland, fucking terrible designs that I've ever seen. The only thing that differentiated Genki from any other character is the fact that he had rollerblades, and that's really it. You could switch out any other anime character for Holly. I can think of like 5 other characters that look exactly like her with a different hair color. And also, I want to talk about the fact that the monsters are literally the worst monsters I've ever seen. They're the most generic piece of shit monsters ever. There's just a rock man, a shitty eyeball, they couldn't even think of good, interesting dinosaurs for them to fight. It was just fucking black dinos. Racist, by the way.
Also racist. I can imagine
Dave,
Evan's going to
feeling
give this a
about
5 out of 5, but we're going to wait and hold off because he seems really passionate about this. I just thought it was generic. I thought the school kids were pretty generic, and I will actually allow Evan's passion to speak for myself because I thought the monsters were lazy. The fact that you have like 3 different versions of the same stone golem in different places, at least with Pokemon, like they inhabit a world or they have a specific purpose, or even in like Magi-Nation, which we'll get to in a second, they come from a place of imagination. These things are just they felt lazy to me, or they just looked like poorly designed. Like Suezo, the eye sperm, was like nobody wants to hang out with that thing. You're a giant like pink-eyed pustule just waiting for disease. It just there was nothing good about it. And my favorite,
he's just a giant comma.
He was a giant comma that spit and blinked at you.
He was like
just not
a shitty Pac-Man reject.
It's not good. And then the first monster that they get is this weird like duckadillo that I don't even know, man. It just didn't do it for me. I will say that Pixie still remains one of my favorites, but she did not show up in this episode, so she does not get counted.
Oh.
Sean, what's your score on Monster Rancher character design?
I gave character design a 3.
Wow, average. You think average?
I thought average.
Black
I felt
dinosaurs?
average. I felt pretty average about this.
They're
I'll
like,
always give dinos at least an average.
But let's make them black.
I will always give dinosaurs an average rating. I love dinosaurs.
All right, so 3 from Sean. Evan?
Before I give my score, I'm just going to reiterate the fact that I saw a brief glimpse of a rabbit who was like boxing with a bandana around his neck. Fuck whatever that thing is. 1 out of 5.
It was Usagi Yojimbo.
I don't know. How dare you? That's terrible. I think it's all
1 out of 5.
1 out of 5. I think it's all generic. Just they put it into a design machine and they cranked out this shit. Does anybody know how many like monsters there are in Monster Rancher?
4.
There are 4 total monsters. Hot lady, eyeball, rock guy, racist dinosaur,
and Duckadillo. So 5.
And
Duckadillo.
Duckadillo.
There's just not that many. There really isn't. I gave this one a 2 out of 5 because I felt like it was at least they had monsters, but pretty generic stuff all around. So that's a 2 for me.
Okay.
So we all kind of averaged out there again.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure if Evan knocked it down one for spite points, but no, it just sounds like it was spite directed directly at the show. So I think we're okay. Let's jump over to Magi-Nation. We're talking character design here again. So the kids and the critters. Sean, what do you have?
It was very interesting design because the humans felt more real and not as anime-ish as we've seen in some of the other cartoons. And then suddenly when you're introduced to these dream creatures, they sort of have a very, we're trying to be hip and cool, cartoonish quality to them that I didn't quite understand. Like they were trying to summon like a Ninja Turtle that would kind of hang out, chill with them and eat pizza. Just felt that they tried to make the dream monsters too hip and too interesting. And it just, I don't know, it just didn't click with me. I did not really like this character design for this show at all.
Yeah, fair enough. Is that all for character design for you there?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Evan, what was your take?
I'm going to go in the opposite direction as Sean again. I actually kind of liked the character design of the monsters and the people in general in terms of Magi-Nation. I thought that, like, first off, like, I got, like, the whole elf Lord of the Ring inspiration for all of the characters that were there. Like, what was his, Tony Jones? He was just generic kid.
You know, your protagonist, Tony Jones.
Your protagonist, Tony Jones. Yeah, it's ultimately, he was harmless. But I liked at least, like, the characters themselves, including the villain and the different, like, I did like the monsters in terms of, like, basically it was like dogs and cats that were slammed together with elements.
They were like straight up Pokemon.
Like one of, like the main one named, what is this, Farouk or what? Farouk the wrestler.
You go Farouk.
He's an 80s wrestler.
Yeah, I liked his design in so much that he was like a bear who had antlers but was also powered by electricity. I thought that was kind of a crazy mishmash of things. So to be honest, like I kind of like the character design when all is said and done.
So for me, I actually like the human the human character design a little bit more because the first characters we're introduced to are not like random protagonist Tony Jones. I almost called him Toby Jones.
Tony Jones.
Tony Jones.
Good old TJ.
Go
Good
TJ.
old TJ.
Run your race. So I actually like the other characters from this Moonlands, which is a separate world, which we'll talk about when we get to the plot. But they were kind of interesting, if only because they had kind of like a different attire. So they had like these weird like leaf skirts. The men and the women both had these like weird leaf skirts. So it wasn't a great design, but it did clue me into the fact that we were like, we're not on Earth. We're in some weird place where they just make leaf skirts for some strange reason. And I think that was great, but it did at least make them look a little bit more unique. So does that make sense? I wasn't a fan of the design, but it was more unique than just generic average. Yeah.
I want to bring up one final point before we score this.
Please.
The scenes where TJ is with this elder figure,
Yes.
presumably his grandfather.
Yes.
Allegedly.
Those scenes are so poorly designed and animated, and you can tell because the grandfather and a majority of these characters that are in this show never blink. And I don't know what it is, but there are moments when you are watching a cartoon where you take blinks for granted, but when they're gone, it's noticeable and it's creepy as fuck.
I did not quite notice that as much, but I will go the other direction on the creature designs. Okay, so I'm a little bit more with Sean. They look like a kid just had an idea. He's like, I really like puppy dogs and deer and polar bears. I'm gonna make a creature that has all those things, and it looks like a 5-year-old drew it. And they don't change when they like from TJ's sketches to when the thing comes to life. It looks like his terrible shitty drawing. Yeah, Sean, what you got?
To back you up on that, if I really like a rhinoceros horn and a bush.
Yep. Like,
I made Ugger. Cool.
Ugger.
The name of that character is the sound I made when he came on screen. Just went, ugh.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. There was like, what do we have? Ugger? Freep? I think one was named Freep. I couldn't even understand. They just said like they made a sound, and we're like, that's this thing's name.
Somebody sneezed into the microphone.
Yeah, that's basically what
That's it.
Freep.
There you go.
Yeah. So not great. Not thrilled. These are probably my least favorite creatures of all the shows we've talked about.
Wow,
so far.
strong words.
And yet my score does not really reflect that. Sean, what did you score this one?
I gave this a 2.
You give that a 2? Evan, what about you?
3 out of 5.
Evan gave it a 3, but I might change my score. I had a 3. I might come back to it. I might go 2 for that one. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. So Evan, you had a 2 or you had a 3?
I had a 3 for that one.
Remind me that I said I might change that too.
Sean, are you telling me that you didn't like the design of the coach who came out and reinforced the idea that everyone has to stretch so that blood reaches their muscle, oxygen reaches the blood, which will reach their muscles? I love that
man was just screaming into like empty space. No one was listening to him.
Evan, the science portion of this show was the weirdest thing I think I may have ever watched because, and I quote, increased blood flow means more oxygen to those muscle groups.
Do you want to hear my explanation as to why I think that is? I think that this show was presented as an educational cartoon, and so that was their way of trying to like sneak it under the radar.
The rubber stamp from the
so they can get the
Society.
E/I in there.
Yeah.
So they get more money.
Trying to get that funding.
That stamp.
Ugh.
National Education Foundation.
Ugh.
Ugger.
Grr.
Ugger. All right, so I'm on the fence about that one. It's a 2 or a 3 for me. But let's jump back to Monster Rancher, and now we're getting into battle mechanics. So again, this is going to address how the fights between the different human characters with their creatures is supposed to take place, the mechanics of how that works, and then also the monster transitions when they come onto screen in whatever fashion they come out in. So, John, battle mechanics for Monster Rancher. What do you got?
Battle mechanics for this are very confusing to me because on one hand, you start the whole show out at a tournament that would be sort of akin to the live-action movie The Wizard, where there is a video game battle finale at the end of it. And instead of being what the game Monster Rancher actually is in real life, they're playing more of like a Mortal Kombat style Battle Rancher game. The point of Battle Rancher is very clear. They say it in the theme song. It's reinforced, multiple times in the show is collect discs, unlock monsters. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And, they have these huge shrines that are dedicated to them, and it's pretty fun. And the pageantry that's behind them of just them kind of like waving their hands aimlessly over top of the controls and activating everything is interesting in and of itself. But you never really get a sense of, are they fighting other monsters? You just get the sense that they're finding discs and collecting and unlocking these monsters, and that's really it.
Yeah. Evan, what was your take on this?
Well, first off, in looking at the fights and everything, the battle mechanics are non-fucking existent.
Right.
They don't exist. They don't happen. If you look at a show like Pokemon, where they're ordering their monsters to do stuff like, Tail Slash or like, Fire Breath or something, they just, in Monster Rancher, they just sort of all haphazardly smash into each other and don't really do anything. Like, the way Genki wins in his tournament is by pulling out the fact that his version of Suezo can spit and eat the Rock Man. Like, it's all bullshit. Fuck this piece of crap. But, so, it's essentially like, I do like the idea of the disc. Like, the idea that it unlocks them and everything, and that maybe it's based on, again, imagination, and that you put it in, and it something pops out, something new pops out. But at the end of the day, it's just like they needed to put a little more thought into how these fights all happen.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with both of you guys. I appreciated the fact that we started with a battle, even if it was, spoiler alert, even if it was a dream sequence. And then we didn't really get to like a structured battle throughout the rest of the show, but we did have some like minor skirmishes and stuff. So you never really got a chance to see if there's any kind of like mechanics to the actual tournament itself. But then, Evan, like you mentioned, I like the mechanic of them spinning the discs. I always thought that was cool for the game. I thought that was kind of just like a neat idea that you could just grab a CD out of your collection or off the shelf or whatever, or get like special ones, and then literally just open your game console, pop the game out, put another game in, spin the disc, and then you generate a monster. It was kind of a gimmick, but I thought it was cool. I thought that it was cool they added it to this show and tried to like hamstring it in there when they go to this other world.
Which monster do you think pops out if you put Ace of Base into your CD player?
Ooh, probably Pixie. I'm gonna try that later.
Anything to get Pixie.
Anything to get Pixie. I'm hoping it's for just the Pixies. Just put a Pixie CD.
It's the Pixie. Oh, good lord.
But I mean, it wasn't great. But they had a battle and they had some basic mechanics there. So my score, I think, reflects that. Speaking of scores, Sean, what did you have for this one?
I felt that the concept of collecting these discs and unlocking these monsters was unique enough, but not unique enough to get me to want to play the game, so I gave it a 3.
You gave it a 3. Average score.
Yeah.
Evan, what was your score for battle mechanics from Monster Rancher?
I would have, again, I gave it a higher score than I would have due to the fact of the CD unlocking and everything, but ultimately the battle mechanics of the monsters fighting each other was next to non-existent, so I'll give it a 2 out of 5.
Okay, so Evan gives that a 2. I give it a 2 as well for pretty much the same reasons. The mechanic of spinning the disc was cool. They showed a battle. That's worth 2 points. They didn't do anything more. They didn't go above and beyond. So for me, it's just a 2. Let's talk about Magi-Nation now. So we've got the battle mechanics here, which again includes sort of like monster transitions, summonings, things like that as well. So, Sean, what was your take on this one?
Again, these ones kind of started pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We have the whole transformation effect that we have with this animite,
right,
and then the swirling colors that we have that are around the summoner's arm. It hits the ground, it makes a huge impact, it creates this dream creature. You really don't know if the point of this show is to collect more animite or just in order to unlock creatures, or if your current animite just unlocks creatures, or if you upgrade your current creatures to create better creatures. You get to see a couple battles, but the order of operations is really not detailed or communicated very well.
It did not follow Robert's Rules of Order.
No, not at all.
For this battle
whatsoever. Rules of Order for Magi-Nation.
Yeah, and they did
follow God.
It's funny because as I'm explaining this to myself, I'm like, "Ooh, I gave that a higher score than I think I."
This is how I feel about the character design.
I convinced myself.
All right, Evan, what was your take on the mechanics of Magi-Nation?
To be honest, I was kind of a fan.
Okay.
I mean, really, like the idea of the ring or the stone transforming or releasing these animals in kind of a similar vein as like Pokeballs and everything,
mm-hmm.
but like they kind of are the Animites or they aren't. It was kind of an interesting idea in the fact that like it seemed very trippy and it seemed very it kind of seemed interesting in the fact that everything was kind of transforming from these original gems and rings that they had, and the way that they would instantly snap back into place once they were done was fun to see. To be honest, I was kind of a fan of the idea of it, and I don't necessarily know how much in terms of them actually like fighting each other was necessarily that great, but I was a big fan of the idea.
Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys on this one. I like the fact that we start this thing out with like a pretty epic battle between what will eventually be revealed as one of the bigger bads in the series, if not the big bad, and some of his minions and some of the hero characters as well. But they've got some pretty epic monsters. Again, I didn't like the designs, but I like the fact that they're at least showing these epic monsters coming out in the beginning of this thing. You don't get a handle on how the battles are supposed to work because it's not like a structured tournament style, like say a Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a Pokemon tournament. They're just straight up battles. So they're almost just like knockdown, drag out battles. Whoever walks out of here alive is the winner. But I do like the mechanics of like, you have to summon this thing through the crystal, the stone that you have. And I think they tease in the beginning, they've got this kind of, we'll talk about this in the plot, but they've got this thing that's covered in all these different stones. And I'm wondering if it has a bunch of these creatures, it just has multiplied the power that allows you to summon larger or more creatures. This also introduces the concept of the dreamland or the dream world. So the creatures are summoned from this plane, they battle until they're tired, and then they are sent back to prevent them from being killed. So they're sent back to this place as well. There was enough going on here that I kind of liked the mechanics, even if there was no explanation of any kind of collection or any rigid rules, but I liked the introduction of the imagination of this. So for me, it was a little better than Monster Rancher. Not great, but better. John, what'd you end up scoring this one?
I gave this a 2.
You gave it a 2. And I think you made that pretty clear that you weren't super happy with how they handled it. That's fair. Evan, what about you?
I gave it a 4.
Wow, 4.
I thought it wasn't bad.
Oh my gosh.
Listen, it was way better than that disc shit. Let's just get that out of the way. It was way better than that. No, I like the ingenuity of it. I liked all their shitty rings. No, I'm kidding. No, it was actually wasn't bad.
You have to be brave and courageous to handle that ring.
Brave and courageous. Only the courageous can handle.
They're like crappy Planeteers.
Yeah. Hey, the Planeteers were great.
You can just slap that ring out of their hand and it defeats all the purpose that they have.
Yeah.
Just interrupt their quotes. So for that reason, I give it a 3 out of 5 because they at least introduced some imagination. They had some unique kind of style to it. They just didn't show me enough. So for me, it was a 3 out of 5 for battle mechanics. Now, we've been teasing this before. We're actually going to get to the plot here a little bit. We're not going to dig into it too much. We're just kind of giving an overview. And we'll talk about this a little bit longer than the other ones, just to kind of give you an idea of what really happened here. But Sean, what was your take on the plot going back to Monster Rancher now?
What the fuck is going on?
Fair
in
enough.
Show? If you're unfamiliar with the concept of Monster Rancher, it is very different from the Pokemon style game where you're not battling monsters. You're actually just kind of raising sort of Tamagotchi style creatures and you're raising them up from young monsters. And that's really it. That's really kind of all there is to Monster Ranchers. It's really all there is to Monster Ranchers. And so just having the name Monster Rancher with this plot, like, are they? What are they ranching?
Don't try to explain it. No. Your head will explode.
There's a they're more corralling monsters in certain places and then capturing them from the discs, but there's no ranching going on. I don't know. It was very frustrating.
So let me ask you this: what about as far as the kind of the action beats and the adventure and the meet cutes and the transition from Genki's world into this other world of the monsters? What was your take on that? On more of kind of just like the high fantasy adventure of this episode?
I think the fantasy adventure portion of this is pretty decent. I think it's average, and I enjoyed it as such. I love the idea and the enthusiasm. We've seen this in Captain N, the Game Master.
That's exactly what I think. Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea, and I continue to love the idea because this is what I wanted as a kid. I wanted to get sucked into a video game and then be living in that world and have fun with it. It seemed like Genki's journey was less the excitement of being captain and the game master and more of just the trivial minutia of having to raise and care for a monster that we've all said that we are not big fans of.
Yeah, agreed. So I think I think that's a valid, maybe not concern with this, but just a valid point on this, that it was just kind of like this fantasy adventure thing, but they just didn't really capitalize it. But I'm speaking out of turn. Evan, what was your take on the plot here?
Let me paint you all a picture.
Oh, here we go. Get
okay,
ready.
so
Bob Ross in the house.
Here we have a shitty kid that nobody loves.
Yeah.
His parents are shoving sweet cakes into his mouth, so he'll shut the fuck up and get away.
He sleeps in class.
He sleeps in garbage and filth.
Also garbage.
He's waiting for his monster CD. By the way, could I ask, did you all find it really weird that I thought that whole thing was a dream because he has 18 fucking dreams in the first 5 minutes? I thought him winning the CD was a dream.
He's got narcolepsy, so it's hard to tell.
So you would think so. I mean, and then he gets pulled into the world. It's generic.
He might be in a coma.
I hope he is.
Well.
I hope he isn't blighting anyone else's life with this.
My God.
With this bullshit.
If you're gonna wish a coma on someone, let it be a 10-year-old cartoon character.
He gets pulled into some world. It's like surprisingly, Monster Rancher and Magi-Nation have pretty much the same plots, but he gets pulled into a world that's not his own to fight.
Here's a tip: most of these cartoons that we
At
watch
the
have
exact
the exact same plot.
I don't think Ash Ketchum got pulled into a world
true.
of
It was a metaphorical
metaphorical
yes.
world.
He became an
10-year-old
adult.
living on his own. But I mean, ultimately, it's just bland. It's generic. I didn't feel good or bad about it. It was there. The terrible designs of all the monsters and everything certainly didn't do the plot any favors. I would be interested to see at the end. I mean, I'm never going to fucking watch this ever again.
No.
But I would be interested to see how this all ends and if Genki learns anything.
Doubtful.
And it seems doubtful, but, at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'll take points from both of you guys. So, to Evan's point, I thought that it felt a little generic. But then to Sean's point, my notes basically say, who doesn't want to get swept up, taken to a magical world full of fighting monsters that you can kind of control? That's cool. That's fun. That's the whole premise of the show. So for that reason, I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this, even though I've seen this exact story before.
Right.
A ton of different times, a ton of different ways. But then, Evan, like you said, there was nothing really about this show or the plot or the fact that the character is pretty unlikable. You don't really want to spend time with him. He's kind of an asshole. So for me, it was just kind of, it didn't hit all the right beats, but it was enough that it was just like, okay, this is a show. This exists. It's fine. So I think my score reflects that. Sean,
It should go 70. It should go 72 more episodes.
Yeah, I should go for the whole
71.
Whole shebang.
Oh
I'm gonna go 71 and then just stop
30, yeah.
and just not watch the final
Watch the end.
Sean, what did you rank this one?
I gave this a 2.
Gave it a 2.
Mainly because you brought up a great point that who doesn't want this idea,
Well, you
but
said
it
that,
just
yeah.
didn't. It just did not feel unique to me.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think we're all kind of in agreement on that. So, Evan, how did you score this one?
Also a 2.
Also
I
a
thought
2.
I thought it was just bland and generic. It was
Okay.
kind of like pumped out in a factory
Fair enough.
or something after
The Monster Rancher.
Pokemon had become popular and
Yes.
they wanted Sony wanted their own thing. Sony made this?
Yeah, because it was for the PlayStation.
Oh,
so
okay,
it was
yeah. So
probably-
Sony wanted their own thing and just shit it out.
Yeah, at least distributed. No, it did seem. I remember when the copycats kind of first came out. This was one of the earlier ones, and it did feel very much just like cashing in on the Pokemon thing, just with that different gimmick of spinning the disc. But yeah, I actually gave this one a 3 because I liked the childish nature of it, even though that's also what I hated about it, if that makes sense. Because it was just kind of like a free-spirited adventure. This kid, he just Captain ends his way into this other world, and then he's just like, awesome, this is what I've always wanted. And that would be my reaction if I was pulled into like fucking Dinotopia or Neverending Story or pretty much any of these fantasy places. So
Don't you dare compare this to Neverending Story, or especially Dinotopia.
I don't know, Neverending Story also had rock people.
Oh god, I swear I'll start punching the walls if we compare the shitty monsters in Monster Rancher to the rock biter in Neverending Story.
So just to be clear, listeners, and also to protect my livelihood, I am not comparing them to Neverending Story because I would like to continue hosting this show. No, I wouldn't compare it to
But
that.
like hypothetically, Dave, if you did,
Nope.
Neverending Story, was there ever a cartoon for that?
No,
Oh,
I don't think so.
That's probably a good idea.
Crap, there might actually.
I don't know. There might be. We'll have to look into that. But for me, I gave it a 3. So 3 for the plot, and I'm going to stick by that because we're talking about Neverending Story. Moving on to Magi-Nation. Let's go to the plot there. Sean, what do you have for this guy?
Kind of had a Field of Dreams motto that it went by for me.
Okay.
It was sort of like, we see this with TJ's early sketch drawing that he's showing to creepy non-blinking grandpa.
Yes.
And it had the, if you dream it, or I guess in this case, if you doodle it, then they will come and live and be monsters. And so, we've hit on the chord of imagination plenty of times in our discussion about Magi-Nation. And that was interesting. And I liked that. It's pretty clear that we're looking for the final dreamer. Or dreamers, as there might be in this plot.
Spoiler alert!
They make that very, very clear, and they hint at a lot of really interesting plot points for the future. But my problem was that all of those interesting things that could happen in the future kind of muddied the waters for me a little bit. So a lot is thrown at you very quickly. The dream plane, the core glyphs, dream stones, darkness, void magic, Book of Elders. At this point, like, I'm not sure what is what. It felt overly complicated at points. But I loved the idea that they made it very clear that, like, look, looking for the final dreamer, gonna summon the final dreamer. Oh no, there could be final dreamers.
Question mark? Exclamation
Plural. So that was interesting. That was, I felt fun.
Okay, cool. Evan, what was your take?
I would say that like all the crazy batshit stuff that they threw in there, like the Book of Elders and the Final Dreamer and stuff, kind of elevated it above Monster Rancher in general, because they both share, as we mentioned, very similar ideas of a fish out of water, of this kid showing up. At least Tony Jones.
TJ.
At least Tony Jones was bland, and like he wasn't offensive in the way that Genki was. So I mean, to be fair, like Magi-Nation, it took a lot of the similar story beats that Monster Rancher did. But considering that all the crazy crap that they threw in there was more interesting, I would put it on a level above Monster Rancher.
I think we're on the same page again, because for this one, I like that they had unique elements to the story. It's something actually different from what we've seen before in the previous Pocket Monster shows, right? So normally we get a protagonist that's on this somewhat selfish quest to just like go out, imprison all these different creatures, keep him to himself, train him, and then make him battle for his own.
Looking at you, Ash Ketchum.
Ash Ketchum, you're the worst. But basically, this one opens up with like a much bigger scope, right? So the other shows, they start with this very focused goal for the character, and then they expand to like some greater threat, some greater evil that the protagonist has to rise up and use his new friends / slaves to defeat. In this case, it actually opens up with that. So it opens up with a big threat, people trying to fight against it, and then each side using their own allied creatures to act out that sort of a proxy battle. So you've got this bigger picture, and then it zooms back in and focuses on this little guy who's never, Tony Jones, like you said, he's not offensive, he's not really super heroic. He's just a kid that he just wants to run a race, and he likes doodling animals. That's it. So I kind of like the...
Doodling as in drawing.
Yeah, when Sean was talking about if you doodle it, they will come, that was making me a little...
No, if you diddle it.
Everybody's
pointing
in a very serious direction here.
It's very disturbing. But I mean, I like that they flipped that a little bit, that it was this bigger picture, and then the kid is thrown into that, and he's maybe the final dreamer, which takes me to my next point. I like the fact that, I don't remember her name. What was it? Eden.
Oh, right.
Eden is the other character in this who has, I like her story. She very much wants to be the final dreamer. She very much wants to read this Book of Elders that her advisor, her senior member, I think is her grandfather, Orwin, has basically said, like, you can read any book in this library except that one. So of course she wants to read that book. And she thinks she's the final dreamer because she thinks that a woman can be a final dreamer as well. So I like that they actually brought that. I know Sean's laughing that off.
So how ridiculous!
How ridiculous! Even Orwin is basically just like, yeah, all right, honey, whatever.
No, that's why I'm laughing is because this
like,
this show seems very sexist towards this young woman who's just like, I would like to gain this knowledge. I feel that this responsibility has been bestowed upon me, and he's like, young girl, get out of here.
I would go count your breaths.
I would like to learn about making me a sandwich. Yeah. And they like,
it's like, I just want to read a book. She's like, no, you can't do that.
Nah, that's
and then even ridiculous. When she runs away at some point in the episode because she's kind of rebelling, she's basically fought off with the assistance of Orwin. She's fought off this big bad, which we'll talk about in a second, more or less by herself. And then she's run off to try to find the final dreamer because she's had sort of a vision as well, right? So she's tapped into this book that's only supposed to be accessible by the final dreamer. So she thinks maybe she has a shot at it. And then she goes off, and then Orwin, of course, sends this guy named Strag, this kind of like super macho, but like too cool to hang out with everybody, so he just lives in a fucking tree by himself. He sends him after her, and it's kind of just this weird balance that eventually you'll see all these three kids united together in a strange world, which I need to talk about in a second because I don't really understand this world. Maybe you guys can help me out.
Yeah, I don't really get it either.
But there was enough interesting stuff there that I was like, okay, this is different. It's a unique take. It's much more modern than the other stuff that we've watched. Even if it's just like a standard quest, they've introduced some interesting elements. So I actually like this one quite a bit. This is probably my favorite part of the entire watching experience. But I've rambled on far too long. Sean, what was your score for the plot of Magi-Nation?
You know, I think for some of these unique takes and some of these hints at something bigger, and yet the focus that's on sort of this core group of three people who are going to become the heroes and heroines of this show, it was interesting enough for me to give it a 3.
A 3? Fair enough. Evan, what about you?
I'll also go ahead and say a 3 for all the points that Sean had mentioned in terms of, yes, it was very generic in its roots, but ultimately with all the crazy crap that they threw in there, it kind of elevated it above the level of Monster Rancher for sure.
So that's a 3 for you?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't sway either one of you for any extra points with my postmodern feminism arguments for Magi-Nation?
You want me to take points away?
Yeah,
I'll take spite points.
I'll fucking points away.
Some spite points. some chauvinist spite points out there. Where's Mel? I need Mel back. Mel and Angie, where are you? No, I give it a 4. I was actually really impressed with the way they handled the plot. I felt like it was I don't know, a little more modern, a little more contemporary than some of the other stuff we've watched before. So I gave it a 4.
Interesting.
For now, I might actually balance this 4 out later with a detraction from the character design point. But now, this is my favorite part of the show that we're getting to now because it's always interesting, it's always different, and I never know what's going to happen. Of course, we're talking about the big boss. Because we watched the first episode, the big boss is usually kind of lukewarm, and we never know who's going to pick what for the big boss. Sometimes it's a flock of Spiros. Sometimes it's a really kick-ass duelist. We don't know. Could be anything. So, Sean, let us know what you thought was the big boss of Monster Rancher, and then give us your reaction.
My initial thought was from the theme song that we were going to get a glimpse at the evil Moo.
Yeah. Moo. I hope this guy is just like a big cow, please.
Let's get something straight, writers, that if you name a villain after the sound that a cow makes, I'm not going to be frightened or intimidated in any way, shape, or form. It sounds terrible. That's not a name that instills fear in the hearts of anybody. That's ridiculous. It was disappointing. You know, from the visual and the idea and the look of Moo as sort of being this shadow creature with horns and he's got red glowing eyes. Fantastic. Right. That looks wonderful. But your name misses the target and doesn't even really make an appearance in this episode. So you end up having... Really, the boss of this episode is Black Dino and all of his Black Dino soldiers. Oh, no. And let's be clear, I love dinosaurs. So I was a super fan of looking at these guys. So they seemed very fun. And I will say that they were undeterred when there were moments when obstacles were thrown in their way. When Genki jumped across that ravine, they were like, we're going to go all the way around. I can respect that in a villain.
Evan, what's your take on the boss of Monster Rancher? Now, keep in mind, you can differ from Sean
Yeah. Sean made great points. I mean, ultimately, it's like with Moo, that's the most ridiculous name of all time. And to be honest, I think that they picked Moo because it rhymed with something in the theme song, and that's all. And that's all that they, and that's what the whole rhymes with this. Just Moo, whatever. We're not even going to introduce an actual
Fair point.
main guy at the end. Like the way that his modus operandi of just wanting to take over the world by changing goody monsters into baddies was, it's humdrum, it's run of the mill, and the fact that they didn't even show him, like the idea of a big shadow with eyes, it's been done to death, and the black dinos, just dinosaurs, man. They were like, they didn't do anything. I mean, like, they failed at their job. The only thing that differentiated them from like velociraptors was the fact that they wore little helmets, and some of them wore necklaces,
and they talked.
and also they talked. But we don't have scientific evidence or facts in front of us to say that one way or another dinosaurs couldn't talk in that era. But ultimately, it's just like, it was disappointing all the way around. I thought that the black dinos weren't able to really do their job of being threatening or...
But just to be clear then, so Sean says black dinos are the big boss, and this one you say black dinos are the big boss in this episode.
I would actually say that Moo is the much like the Emperor in Star Wars, his shadow looms large over the proceedings.
I disagree with it, but I like that approach.
I will go with Moo.
Fair enough. I had 3 different bosses that could have been in this one. The first one was, I'm just going to call him Big, because that was the captain of the other team in Genki's dream.
It was real, though.
Well, no, I don't think it was.
He got the CD.
What was that? I thought he just bought it. Like, I thought his parents bought it for him.
I would imagine it had to be a magic CD.
So you think he was just dreaming back to that time where he actually won that tournament?
That's what I assumed.
That's what my thought was.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So Big was an actual guy with the word Big on his shirt.
How else would you know it was
lost
him?
Yeah. Oh, Big. It's Biggie. So that's like the only actual...
Biggie and his Black Dinosaurs, right?
Biggie and his Black Dinosaurs is my favorite album. Before he died, rest in peace. So... Big actually could have been the most legitimate boss in this fight because it's the only one he actually went up in a Monster Rancher battle against.
A duel.
Right.
That's not who I went with. I actually went with Black Dinos as well. They're pretty useless as far as the bosses go because they just kind of like chase the guys around and they even had them like penned in a number of times, but they failed each time. And, Genki and Holly and I-Jizz and stuff managed
You mean Suezo?
Suezo, sorry. They managed to all run away. So, I mean, they're terrible. They got beaten. They got outsmarted, but they were tenacious. They were tenacious Black Dino. So that is who I went with for the boss on this one. I could have gone with Big. Mm-hmm. Sean, what'd you score this one?
Evan reminded me of a great point about using the terms goodies and baddies and just how dumbed down and simplistic it makes that sound. I know that these shows are for children, but it feels dumbed down on a level that we have not yet dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up giving this, because I love dinosaurs, I ended up giving this an average score of 3.
Oh, an average. Just because dinosaurs, I'd like to point out.
I want a shirt that just says "because dinos," and that's
because Black Dinos.
Oh. Black Dinos. Evan, what'd you score this one?
1 out of 5.
Wow.
I thought
wow.
One for Moo.
I thought Moo was stupid. I hate his name. The whole idea of a big evil thing that turns goodies into baddies. I thought it was weak. I thought it was lame. I didn't if you had given us any hints as to who or what Moo was, that would have maybe swayed me a little bit, but ultimately, it was just dumb. I hated Moo. I didn't like him.
Evan, I also want to mention to you that the word "moo" did in no way, shape, or form rhyme with anything
so they didn't even get
in
that
the
right.
theme song.
You guys screwed that up too.
Maybe they got it wrong and they thought something was going to rhyme with "moo."
I feel that your 1 is justified.
Thank you.
I would have had a 1 if I decided by the end of the episode that the big guy was the boss because he was pretty useless. But I gave this one a 2. Because Dino. Right. Because Black Dino.
Black Dino.
If it would have been a white Dino, probably just a 1. But because I'm feeling
Black dinos.
social pressure. It's going to be a 2. It's going to be a 2. Guys, we're all the same. We're all extinct when it comes to dinos. I don't see colors of dinos. Anyway, let's move over to Magi-Nation and talk about the boss here. Sean, I'm curious to think what you thought was the boss of Magi-Nation.
So I went with Agram.
Fair enough. Who's Agram again, just to remind folks out there?
Agram looks like, if you're familiar with the popular video game Chrono Trigger, he looks like the villain then turned hero, Magus.
Okay. It's fair. Fair for his powers and his appearance, I think.
Yes. So Agram, I loved the fact that he's evil. He's trying to destroy everything. They have to use the Book of Elders. They have to use the strongest weapons that they have that are possible. My only problem with him was that when they used them, he didn't seem to try to avoid any of the beams of energy or the white light that shot in him in any way, shape, or form. But I will say, in his defense, he summoned what looked like a saber-toothed whale.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
sweet.
That's pretty badass.
It didn't really do it.
But it was super useless. Yeah. Dude comes back as a ghost.
Yep.
He comes back as an apparition later. That, to me, is threatening. Is that if I can kill you with a white light and then you come back as a ghost later on, that's hate. That's dedication to just pure hate. Like, fuck you. I'm going to come get you in death. Like, I admire that dedication.
It's good
I'm
dedication.
gonna come get you in death.
All right, cool, Sean. Thanks. So, Evan, what do you think about the boss for Magi-Nation? Do you line up with what Sean was saying?
So, to give everyone a little backstory, Morbius the Living Vampire was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man number 98, created by Stan Lee and drawn by John Romita Sr. Everybody's looking at me weird. Oh, right, no, this guy is just looks like Morbius the Living Vampire.
Yeah. Same guy.
Yeah, same guy. I thought that the big bad was essentially, what is his name again?
It's Agram.
Agram.
I thought Agram was a pretty good villain, all things considered. I thought that the idea of him being in an incorporeal like ghost that kind of manipulates the strings from a netherworld was something that was kind of interesting, and the idea of having to stop him from returning. I mean, it's been done before, but again, it's kind of a nice hook in the sense that this is something that you really don't want to happen.
Right.
And by the way, if we could talk for a second about his henchmen, the 2 goblins, there's a scene where one of the goblins pins down the girl that is the most uncomfortable fucking thing. I just remember squirming in my chair because and it's because of the terrible animation that it lingers for so long.
That's bad.
But it's the way that he's just moving slowly towards her as he's holding her arms down. Truly a terrifying villain for the ages.
You can say rapey.
It was a little bit rapey. But to be fair, I got some laughs from the ideas. Those 2, not from that part, but I got some laughs from the ideas of those 2, those 2 goblins picking left or right to choose who was going to be the leader.
It's definitely the bumbling idiot trope that we've seen.
It's I'll go ahead. It's I'm going to follow you if you could tell me which way is left. And that guy had a 50-50 chance, and he picked the wrong one. And but ultimately, I was a fan of the villains. I thought they were great. They were probably the most entertaining part of the show for me. All of them kind of offered their own unique thing. But at the end of the day, I would say Morbius is the top.
Morbius leapt off the pages of the comic.
And right into Magi-Nation.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to be affected when the Magi-Nation enters into Captain America Civil War.
When it merges.
right into Infinity War. Well, those are actually the Infinity Stones that they use.
That would make slightly more sense.
No, it really wouldn't.
But no, so going back to my point that this show actually starts with a broader mythology, a bigger threat. This is the big threat. So you see him right at the outset, and he is subdued somewhat easily, but thanks to this big MacGuffin, this glyph, this collection of glyphs, that it's the most power that these guys have, and they're able to you couldn't defeat this guy. You can only imprison him in the core of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked for 3,000 years. That's pretty good. So they've got this guy locked up for 3,000 years. And then, like Sean mentioned, he basically projects his spirit, and his spirit has enough power that he can kind of wreak havoc too, and still can talk with his shadow magi from his prison, which he's about to break out of, I'm assuming, at some point very soon.
Mm-hmm.
So while if he would have actually been out in the world and doing his bad guy stuff, I probably would have ranked it higher. I do like the fact that even though he's not 100% back yet, he's still like right there as the main villain of the series. They're not bullshitting around with like this minor stuff and then they'll work up to something later. He's there. They just gotta, eventually their paths are gonna cross. I like that. Sean, what did you end up scoring?
I ended up giving this, and I don't want you to be upset with it.
I'm never upset
I gave this a 4.
Okay, no, that's fair. I disagree, but I think it's fair.
I'll say that I will say that I thought Agram was a very interesting villain. Thought Agram was a very interesting villain. There were a lot of facets to him. That hate that can't be killed and just continues to come back, and he's still angry about stuff, and I love that. So that's why I gave him a 4.
Sean loves enduring hate. It'll get you a 4. Evan, what do you say?
I'm also going to give it a 4.
Wow.
I think that Agram was a fantastic villain. In a way, he's almost the polar opposite of Mu in the fact that his shadow looms large over the show, but you also get to see him on a regular basis, as well as he's just a mustache twirling, charismatic, villain overall.
Living vampire.
Morbius, the living vampire, with suckers on his hand and all that bullshit. And also, I enjoyed the goblins minus the rape. I thought that ultimately, even that monster that they all summoned, like we didn't talk about the monster that the goblins summoned, who was actually pretty bitchin'.
Yeah.
What was that thing? It looked like
didn't even get a name, but he was just like a minotaur on steroids.
Wasn't it? And it also looked like lava was spewing out of it. Like there were cracks in it and everything. I thought that was really, all of them were like really well designed and entertaining. I'd say that the villains were the most entertaining part of Magi-Nation.
What was your score for this one again? Was it
a 4 out of 5?
4 out of 5. For me, it's going to be a 3, only because he's basically just there as a threat. He's not really doing anything yet. He's kind of acting through his minions, which are okay on their own. But if I kind of had to pick one big bad or the other, then I go with Agram, but he's got a 3. So he's got a 3. So that's going to do it for our criteria. So now it's time we can tally everything up. So it's looking like, Sean, what do you have for Monster Rancher?
I have a 13.
You have a 13. And Evan, what do you have there?
I have a good old 8.
I
wish I could have given it lower. God, I hate that fucking show.
That's the lowest score we have on the show so
Is
far.
it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll wear it like a badge of honor.
Evan's got an 8. That beats my score of both Bakugan Battle Brawlers and Yokai Watch by 1 point, which I gave each of them a 9. For Monster Rancher, I'm giving it an 11. My total here is an 11. That's pretty low.
Right.
That's good for an adjusted average of 42%, which is well below our previous low. So this is the new Monster Rancher. Congratulations, the new low.
Awesome.
And it's also like almost half
Send it to hell
of what the IMDb score is. So we did not line up well with this one at all, but I think we're accurate. So I think that's fine. Let's talk Magi-Nation. Sean, what did you have for that one?
I gave this a 13 as well.
Wow, you put them on the same plane. That's interesting. So 13 from Sean.
Yeah, there were definite parts and strengths that each one had, and so they ended up just kind of balancing themselves out score-wise.
Interesting. Evan, what score did you have for Magi-Nation?
Surprisingly, I gave this a 16.
It seems like it just snuck up on
you. Apparently I did. I thought that, ultimately, it's definitely twice as good as Monster Rancher. I can give you that much.
Okay, that's good.
That's good enough. Yeah. No, but to be honest, like, at the end of the day, like, when you really look about it, like, I watched that show, I'm like, what is this bullshit? But at the end of the day, like, the villains are good. The batshit crazy ideas. No, I don't give it 2 shits about Tony Jones. But I also thought that the designs for the monsters and, like, the environment and everything actually weren't bad. The animation is pure shit, and, like, the dubbing doesn't really work. But it has a lot of goofy, crazy ideas to kind of elevate it to a different level than Monster Rancher. That's for damn sure.
Fair enough. I think we're actually all kind of similar on Magi-Nation. I give it a 15, which brings it to an average adjusted score of 58, which sounds bad. But it's actually, it looks like the 4th, I want to say it's the 4th best that we've watched so far. So that's out of 8. It's actually like in the middle ground. So it's actually 4th best. And it actually lines up pretty well with the adjusted IMDb score of 66. So it's not too far off. Granted, it would have failed if this was a high school class, and it wouldn't have got a D. But the fact that we're actually pretty close on this one makes me feel better. Now, Evan...
No Magi-Nation left behind.
No Magi-Nation left behind. That's the next legislation from President Trump. Evan did mention a point that the environment... I want to touch on this quick before we wrap the show up. Evan mentioned that the environment of Magi-Nation was compelling, it was well animated, and it was interesting. I have a question for you guys. Maybe you can help me with this one. At the end of Magi-Nation, this first episode, the three of them are all on the back of Ugger, and they are riding off to safety. And the camera kind of pans back and reveals that they are basically... They're super tiny, and they're basically in like a field of grass.
Interesting.
The entire
it's a twist.
Battle, it's a twist.
It's Inception.
The entire battle has been taking place basically under blades of grass, because all the humanoid characters are so small that a blade of grass is like 10 times their height. And it reveals that there's just like this massive field of grass that's out in front of them. So do you think that this takes place on a planet or a moon that is so massive that we normal humans are shrunk down to like that size? Or do you think there's some sort of weird magical thing going on that maybe this takes place on a place that we know, just on a smaller scale?
Let me do a couple of bong rips and I'll get right back to you. To be honest, I actually didn't even comprehend the idea that maybe, like, now that I think about it, maybe they're still on Earth. And maybe humans
That's what I was thinking.
still...
It could just be a scale thing that they don't even know that there's like this bigger scale. Which, at one point, if that's true, Agram, you basically just step on him and he's dead. So that's kind of like, well, all right, I guess. But I don't know, the fact that he was transported there, I don't know if it was a weird, like, Fern Gully thing, or if he's actually on another planet, but he's the same size, it's just this planet is massive. I don't know, but I thought that was a cool little add-on at the end to make me, like, interested, at least, in watching more. I probably won't, but I'm more interested than I am with Monster Ranch. John, did you pick up on that at all, or?
I did. I really thought that they were on a different planet altogether.
It would make sense, because they say that right at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I just did not. I didn't think or want to believe that they were on Earth on a smaller scale, given the size of the battles and the magic that exists on that plane. It felt like it was something completely separate and different from the world that we know.
Okay, fair enough. That's just my parting 2 cents for Magi-Nation.
No, it's a great point that we missed.
So if you guys are fans out there and you know, drop us a message on our message board, let us know. And thank you so much for your messages and likes and everything on Facebook. You guys have been super vocal.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. It's been fun talking to you guys and finding out, either you just remembered that this show was the thing you were trying to think of forever, or you just are really passionate about, Beyblade for some reason. But I mean, to each their own. You guys love Beyblade.
We've had some
dark Beyblade emails.
We had Pokemon versus Beyblade and it's like split.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me, but I love it.
People have had really great comments, and you guys have been doing a fantastic job with recommendations, which is wonderful because Dave and I add these to a list, and we will watch these shows.
Come hell or high water, we will watch these shows as we do. But that's going to do it for this round of Pocket Monster March Madness. Now it is time for plugs and contact information. So we'd like to, again, thank Evan for answering our summons.
Damn you people for bringing me in to watch these horrible things.
He's getting tired. He's got to go home to the Dream Plane soon.
I got to go home to the Dream Plane.
But before he does, Evan, is there anything that you've got coming up in the next couple weeks you'd like to let people know about?
Sure. Along with Dave, I'm a contributor at Collider.com. I am doing a butt ton of recaps currently. I'll be reviewing Daredevil Season 2. I've seen the first. By this time, everybody will be able to see them. But I'll be reviewing that on Mondays and Thursdays. I'll be reviewing Legends of Tomorrow on Thursdays and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on Tuesdays, along with various other articles and editorials, such as top 5 Superman stories, top 5 Batman stories, and things of that ilk. You can also read my weekly column at comicbook.com, Fan Fridays, as well as any other random editorials that I do over there. Comic Book is great. Check them out. And also feel free to download my stand-up comedy album on Amazon and iTunes called Evan Valentine. That's what you get for being different. I will not mention Monster Rancher at all during that album unless I decide to edit it back in.
That's a bonus. Monster Rancher edition?
I hope you do. I hope you do.
If you get Evan's comedy album and spin it backwards while playing, it'll just...
The Monster Rancher theme starts playing.
It's so weird how that works.
I want to hope and say that I want to believe that your second comedy album that's going to come out is just going to be called Evan Valentine Monster
Rancher? Question mark?
Question mark?
Oh, and also follow me on Twitter. I'm at EV Comedy.
Excellent. Sean, buddy, what do you have coming up over the next couple of weeks?
I'm going to be doing a bunch of shows for Washington Improv Theater's Fighting Improv Smackdown Tournament, commonly called FIST. So I will be performing a bunch in the DC area. You can come and check me out. I'm always performing with Nox. That's NOX ! You can find out more and purchase tickets at witdc.org. And you, as always, you can follow me on the Instagrams and the Twitters at Sean Paul Ellis.
Awesome. And then as for me, if you're interested in finding my work over at collider.com, you can do so. I will be recapping shows like The Flash, which should be back this week as you're listening to this episode.
Yeah.
As well as The Walking Dead, which is just about to wrap up in a couple of weeks here. So we're getting to the end of a pretty thrilling 6th season. And like Evan mentioned, I also do news and reviews, all kinds of stuff over at collider.com. But you can also find me at Nerdist. I'm a science freelance writer for the Nerdist. I've got a decent amount of content up there now, so feel free to come over and check that out. If you're interested in finding out more about my personal fiction stories, you can go to davetrumbore.com and check out some short stories there. And if you'd like, you can follow me on Twitter at DrClawMD. If you'd like to find out more about Saturday Morning Cartoons, you can do so at our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Remember, that's morning with a U. You can also follow us on Twitter at MorningToons. Check out Sean's handiwork on our Tumblr page, SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. We have a Facebook page, which you guys have been fantastic with, and a YouTube account, which you have been listening to, and there's over 200 subscribers out there, so thank you guys all very much.
Yes, thank you.
And you can listen to us each and every week through iTunes and Stitcher. If you'd like to drop us a line, let us know how we're doing, or suggest an upcoming show, you can do so at SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. We've got one more episode of Pocket Monster March Madness left to wrap up this month. Sean, why don't you let the folks know what we're going to be watching next week, and who our special guest will be. He's going to be summoned by Spinning a Stone. It's going to be great.
Well, next week we are going to be discussing Digimon versus Zatch Bell with Tony Lazzaroni.
I can't wait. It's going to be so great. I've been pestering Sean about the Digimon theme and screaming my favorite Digimon evolutions. Digimon. So I do want to mention that when Dave and I did live together for a brief couple months, there was a moment where when Dave would be doing something that he would just yell random Digimon. Yeah, it was fun times.
It was a great time.
Digivolve to
Kabuterimon!
That was it.
That's the one. You can keep your Greymon. Kabuterimon is the best. I'll defend that till my dying day. Oh, I can't wait till next week. I think I'm going to be disappointed because it's going to be all the Digimon babies, and they're not going to like digivolve to anything cool like Angie-Woman for a while.
Angie-Woman. Oh, God.
It's real bad. It's going to be real bad. And then Zatch Bell, which is a complete wild card. I have no clue how that's going to go.
Yeah. Just to give you a heads up for the Digimon, everybody's just going to be digivolved into the lowest possible form, which are just small heads.
Yeah, it's just differently colored heads. Just like a bunch of weird eggs rolling around.
So bad.
Well, be sure to come back and enjoy the fun with us next time on Saturday Morning Cartoons. Thank you guys for listening.